Welcome back to the show. It's Joel. Today's topic is vulnerability. It's going to get really, really real in here. So stay tuned.
Welcome to Reticence and Reverie, a calm space for deep feelers, creative souls, and those that want to know them better. Joel and Carrie explore the beauty and wisdom of introspection, imagination, and intentional living. Get ready for compelling and vulnerable conversations on joy, creativity, and life, as well as considerate answers to your deepest questions. It's an invitation to pause, reflect, and feel inspired.
Welcome back to Reticence and Reverie. I'm Carrie, and as Joel said, we're going to be discussing vulnerability today. You ready to get vulnerable, Joel?
Yes, I'm exposing my delicate underbelly as we speak.
I just totally pictured a shark.
Oh, you did?
Because did you know that sharks won't swim where there's the reefs because if they scrape their underbelly, they will die. So how are you doing today, Joel?
Well, apparently I'm a little punchy, but that's to be expected. We're being vulnerable, and maybe I'm deflecting a little bit, but I'm anxious to talk about this, and I'm ready to get going. So let's do it.
Yeah.
Where do we start?
So as always, we like to discuss and define these terms that we're talking about.
Yeah, it's a great place to start, for sure.
Yeah, so in defining vulnerability, we're talking about a conscious choice to be open and honest about your life despite uncertain risks.
That makes a lot of sense.
These perceived risks can feel scary.
Oh, yeah.
You can worry about how people will react, if they'll use it against you.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's a big one.
Yeah, that you may trigger a response that's unwanted from somebody.
Definitely.
I think we can all say that we've had times in our life where we've felt vulnerable, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And that the perceived risks did come at a cost to us, that the perceived risk did become something that ultimately affected us. I'm assuming that you've had that.
Oh, yeah.
In your life.
Everybody has, I think. And that's what I was going to say, is just that I think there's a lot more people who've been wounded by this walking around in the world today. And so therefore, there's a lot more people who've decided to not be vulnerable.
Yes.
Because the risks are too great. And so I think that's way more pervasive than the former, which is more people. I think there's a lot more people out there in the world like that than there are people being vulnerable. And I think, therefore, being vulnerable turns into a practice that you have to cultivate. And I know in my life, I'm not one of those people by nature, but I've learned to sort of keep it close to my chest. And as I go through life and move through the world, I've been learning to get more vulnerable as we go, and know when to do that and when to balance that and all that stuff. And so, yeah, I can completely relate.
Yeah, vulnerability is very difficult for everybody, especially if you've been hurt in the past. It can stem from childhood bullying or relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, family of origin, I mean, that's certainly my case.
Yeah, and there's that myth out there that vulnerability is a weakness.
Oh, yeah.
And it's actually one of the strongest things that you can do. Put yourself out there.
I would agree with that. 100%.
Share your story, regardless of what the outcome is from whomever you're sharing that with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that it takes a lot more bravery, a lot more heart to put yourself out there and be vulnerable and say, I am going to, stick up for myself in this case, or reveal this about myself, and, damn the outcome. And I think that takes a lot more than just retreating from it or putting forth a fake facade or pretending you're somebody you're not, or just pretending you have it all figured out and I don't have anything wrong with me to show the world and I'm perfect.
Mm-hmm. So there's the myth that vulnerability is a weakness.
Oh, yeah. I've run into that myself, for sure.
Mm-hmm. In our past podcasts, we've discussed, the power of community.
Oh, yeah.
And
definitely.
We talk about vulnerability in that is the way to find your people. There is a power in that. Vulnerability can feel like a weakness because of our pasts. If you grew up with vulnerability in your family, in your friend group, it's going to be a little bit easier for you.
But that doesn't mean it's going to be completely 100% easy for you either. I think it's just inherently scary and hard no matter what. But that being said, of course it's going to be easier if you have modeling for it, you have practice for it as you were growing up, of course.
Yeah. Well, and when they grow up with it too, I thought it was fascinating when my children started elementary school that there was a bench and it was called the buddy bench. And okay. If you were lonely, you were looking for new friends or just somebody to play basketball with you or whatever, go on the swings, there was a bench that the kids would go sit on, and it said buddy bench on the back. And think of how powerful that is, that these kids will go sit on the bench and wait for somebody to come, and they're putting themselves out there from a very early age.
Yeah, that's really good structure and, surrounding the modeling of how you instill vulnerability and therefore self-confidence in kids. I've never heard of this, and this is, I'm kind of, my mind's a little bit blown about that, saying, I wish I had a buddy bench in my life.
I think there's a lot of adults that wish that they had that. The loneliness epidemic wouldn't be as bad, right?
Yes, exactly.
So the Gen Z and the Gen Alphas are growing up with these things. And I see them when I'm driving them around places. Mm-hmm. They are sharing things that when I was a kid would have been scary for me to share. And I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, that's a good thing. I have noticed that. And I think that's one of the good things that's probably come out of social media culture is that there is sort of an inherent insulation built in, which is we've all heard about is the bad thing for things like trolls and bullies and things online and how people feel like they can say anything because they're insulated from any repercussions. I think that the good side of that coin is the vulnerability because it's not so scary to be vulnerable anymore because of that insulation.
And it's received well. There's not the bullying that we saw as children. There's nobody that made it out of the 70s, 80s, and 90s without at least one bully.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I can think of several, as we've previously talked about it, or we'll talk about more on this podcast.
Yeah. So all of us and many people grew up without it. They might have had parents, classmates, friends, communities that used their vulnerability against them. Mm-hmm. And it leaves a pretty big wound when you're already nervous to share something and you share it and it's received in a manner in which you weren't expecting or was hurtful.
Yeah. As you were just telling that, I suddenly had this revelation back to a time in my life. And it's funny because at the beginning of the show or before we started the show, you mentioned, to think about some things where I was vulnerable and it paid off and places it didn't. So we could talk about it. And I didn't think of this immediately, but as you were just talking about it, I suddenly remembered this time in my life where I had a bully in 4th grade, I think. Mm-hmm. I won't mention any names. You know who you are, Paul. Oh. And he just used to he would just follow me around and just harass me and he was just picking on me. And in retrospect, a lot of the things he was bullying me for were moments of vulnerability. Like I remember he really got mad at me because this one time I was on the playground and at recess and I was talking to another guy and we were saying, what's wrong with having a girlfriend? I don't know what we were talking about that, but we kept going, yeah, what's wrong with having a girlfriend? I think that it was that time where girls are gross. And we were kind of saying, maybe they're not gross, And we're saying it's what's wrong with having a girlfriend? And this guy, Paul, overheard that. And he was just like, what? He came over and just like, oh, so you have girlfriends now? Oh my God. And he was just he was relentless for weeks talking about it. He's like, where's your girlfriend, Joel? Where's your, just like all over me. And at some point, and by the way, little context here, I was watching a lot of Dukes of Hazzard at this time, and they were doing a lot of fighting. So I decided it was time for me to stick up for myself. And we started a fist fight on the playground. And in the middle of it, I started crying.
Oh, well,
because
it's emotional.
Yes, it was about the emotional outpouring. It wasn't about being hurt or anything. But here's the thing. I mean, neither of us were winning. It wasn't like a real fight. It was just like a lot of flailing and stuff like that. But I think when I started crying, I think it was a weird, strange wake-up call to Paul. Like, oh, like this is real or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he thought he hurt me when he really didn't mean to. Do you know what I mean? I think he was caught off guard by the whole thing. And anyway, this is a long-winded way of getting to the point that after that, like at some point the teachers broke it up, just to, put a period on that sentence. The teachers broke it up and we went about our business. And I remember after that, Paul didn't engage with me for about a month at all.
Okay.
He just avoided me. But the next time he came up to me on the playground, he was just like, hey, how's it going?
Interesting.
Yeah. Until you were mentioning that, I didn't equate that to being vulnerable. But I think there's something to the fact that he saw that I was willing to be vulnerable around everybody in the playground and literally with somebody's fist over my face. Mm. And I think that changed him. And I think it also said, God, he's human like me.
Yep.
And after that, and I wouldn't say we were friends, but we were friendly all through high school. He was fine. Like I didn't have any problems with him after that. And it's just like there were times we would laugh together, and he was a funny guy. So that that completely changed everything.
You bring up a really good point that vulnerability ultimately shows that we're human. We're not robots. We talked about it in the last episode.
Oh, yeah.
We are not robots.
Well, we're going to talk a lot more about it as we go through this journey together anyway. So
vulnerability is one of the most human things you can do. Sharing things that are hard and letting people see you for who you are.
And just be human and be transparent about being human, because we all are. It's that simple.
Right. But if you did grow up like that, it can feel really unsafe as an adult.
Oh, and foreign and
to share. Yeah. Vulnerability is a power, and it's a human power that we have. It can foster trust and empathy. It can create connection. For you and Paul, that was a connection moment.
Yeah.
There are people that sometimes when they see somebody cry, they feel the weight of that vulnerability, and it can change things. Just crying in front of somebody is a vulnerable situation. It was something I didn't ever do in front of people.
Yeah.
Putting yourself out there and being vulnerable builds resilience.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's saying hard things out loud, and that has power.
Mm.
You have the power to process what you're going through and let somebody heal with you.
Mm-hmm. Especially us verbal processors who need to put it out there anyway. And if you're verbally processing, it helps to have somebody hear you. So. Right.
It's narrating the story to coherency. I have a very loud brain.
Yes.
And so for me,
yes, you do. I can hear it out here.
You can hear the squeaky wheel.
Yes.
But in my loud brain, it doesn't make a lot of sense until it comes out.
Right.
And so whether it's writing, whether it's speaking, it's really important if you are a verbal processor to make sure that you do that. So there is coherency in your story.
Mm-hmm. I think also that sometimes even if you're not a verbal processor, it helps to name things like emotions that are very strong or very heavy. It just helps to name the emotion. And sometimes that can just take some of the pressure of the emotional situation off. But again, doing that in a void with nobody doesn't really help.
Well, yeah. And there's a power in validation too.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
That's that whole being seen and heard. Mm-hmm. It can help you regain perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it can also show others that somebody's gone through something and come out the other side of it.
Yeah.
There is such a power in that.
That's the community part.
Right. In fact, that was when we were talking about this. There's a lot of moments of vulnerability in my life, but with one in particular, I learned the power of sharing your story, not only for my benefit, but it ended up ultimately benefiting somebody else. I was at one point in time in my life in a really difficult relationship.
Yeah.
It was unhealthy. And it took a lot to get out of it.
Yes.
And nobody knew what I was going through at the time.
Right. Probably because you were not being vulnerable before that.
Because I was in a relationship where you weren't allowed to be vulnerable.
Right, sure.
And I didn't want others to see what was actually happening in this relationship.
Right. Well, and probably couple that with societal pressure to not be vulnerable. Like you're at work. We're at work. You don't bring your emotions in here. Don't be vulnerable in here.
Yes. And I happened to be at a conference and meeting up with somebody I've met up with time and again. Didn't really know their story. other than just surface level.
Yeah.
And we happened to be by ourselves, and I shared my story with her. She asked kind of what happened with my relationship. And I just decided I'm going to share it.
Just put it all out there.
Yeah, and
Why not?
I had not really shared it with anybody.
Something in you was wanting to get out and wanting to not keep it anymore and to be vulnerable and to speak it into or out of existence and all that stuff that, we're talking about. But it just kind of took over in that moment.
And I decided this is a safe person and I can share this. And I shared my story with her, and that was the end of it. A year later, we were at a conference, and she comes up to me. She had been in a 20-year relationship with someone, and I had no idea that it was very similar to my story, a very unhealthy relationship. And she told me she was so grateful that I shared my story, that it allowed her to see what life was like on the other side, and that you can make it through, and that she ended her relationship. She was in a much better place.
Great.
And honestly, when she shared that with me, this is well before the life coaching days, I decided that day to be honest and open with anybody who is going through anything.
Sure.
To share that part of my story.
Yeah.
As difficult as it is sometimes, it can benefit other people. It can help other people.
Oh, absolutely. And I would venture so far as to say it will help other people. That's an amazing story, honestly. And that put me in mind of a study, and I can't cite it here, although I'll look for it. And if I can find it, I'll put it in the show notes, of a study I once heard about that said that when they took a bunch of people who were in group therapy, they studied all of the people, but they were really focused on groups where there was one central sharer. So we're not talking about the therapist, but let's say there's the therapist and 6 people.
Okay.
Person number 1 is an extrovert and is talking all the time about their stuff. But you've got 5 other introverts who never talk and don't want to be vulnerable or whatever. They still benefit from the therapy.
Yeah.
And the reason being that talk community, things like, oh, this person's going through what I'm going through, even if they don't verbalize it themselves, even if they don't admit it themselves, they go home at night and they think, oh, I am not alone. And that community will actually change pathways in their brain. And so therefore the being there is the important thing.
Yeah.
And that's just, I think that sort of goes part and parcel with what we're talking about here.
Yeah. The power of hearing other human stories that you can relate to on some level, it makes you feel less alone.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, hey, if they can share their story, I can share mine. You see this in AA.
Absolutely.
That's the power of that. Yeah. You mentioned your grandfather was in Toastmasters. So I'm sure that's what they keep doing. They encourage you. You keep coming back. You keep doing it. And then you go further and further into it. At first, everybody just listens.
Yes.
Then people start kind of trying to help you speak better.
Yeah.
And then ultimately it gets more and more difficult where there's more interactions where you do have to be more vulnerable. You have to listen to feedback.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of the point of the whole thing is not necessarily to be emotionally vulnerable, but it is to put yourself into a position of vulnerability, which is I'm on stage and I'm prepared to be judged. I'm in a position to be judged. And I'm going to have confidence in myself and in my subject that I'm talking about. And I'm going to deliver it. I'm going to be good at this process. And I'm going to learn to do that. That's what the whole organization is about. Not necessarily about sharing your innermost thoughts. Sometimes it's just like, these are my views on politics. These are my it's just speaking, But just speaking in front of people is inherently vulnerable. And therefore, the whole organization is geared towards practicing that.
Yeah. Well, there was an anthropologist that proposed that everybody is afraid of speaking in front of large groups, specifically for the reason when we were in a hunter-gatherer society of no more than 150 people. If you were called upon to speak in front of the group, you had likely done something very wrong.
Oh, really? Okay.
And you might be cast out of the society, whatever their punishment may be. And so that's what they theorize drives that. So it is very vulnerable. I know that. Public speaking is something that I've been doing more often, but it's not easy. It's very difficult. And what's interesting about it is that I found that the more vulnerable I can be in my speech,
yes,
the more comfortable I feel.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm sharing my real human emotions. I'm not trying to put on a facade.
No, you're being genuine. You're being who you are in the world, and you're owning it.
Yep.
And that connects to people. And you can probably feel that happening on an energy level, even if it's not inherent in terms of it's a one-sided conversation. You know, you're not getting feedback from them, but you are. You're getting visual feedback. You're getting, energy in the room. And I think that kind of thing, you can tell that it has an effect. And I think if you're in the audience listening to somebody be vulnerable, you relax in your judgments of the person on stage. And I think that whole energy flow and process is the good stuff that we're talking about here.
Yeah. Well, and even with that, putting yourself out there as we're having this conversation, we're talking about... As we're having this conversation about public speaking and vulnerability, just a few months ago in my professional career, my corporate career, I was called upon as a president of an organization to get up and give a speech.
Yeah.
And it took me some time to figure out what I wanted to say, but I really did want to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
I did want to share with everybody what I believed the benefit of this organization was from a personal perspective.
Right.
And part of that was they gave me a community at a time that I didn't really have much of one.
Yeah.
It was people that understood how difficult that type of job could be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mostly received really good feedback on it. People were kind of blown away that I shared a personal story. And then I also had a person that came up to me afterwards and started kind of giving me a hard time about it. Oh, that sounded like a graduation speech. That sounded... And I realized that was their capacity, and I was bumping up to some form of trigger of theirs.
Yeah, you were making them uncomfortable with the vulnerability because they probably subconsciously thought they were going to be called upon to be vulnerable then. Is this whole organization turning into a vulnerable thing? I don't know if I want to be a part of it.
Yeah, or that
He pulled the Paul on you.
It was a deflection where he was maybe not able to be vulnerable with people.
Yeah.
And it's easier to kind of pick on somebody else for that.
Yes, it is.
So, I ask all of you listening, reflect on a time that you were vulnerable and maybe it wasn't well received. And what did you do with that? Did you push through? Did you maybe try again? Or did you kind of shut down?
Or did you deflect and go after somebody? I mean, I'm sure there are times in other people's lives that I was their bully. I'm sure that it has happened. I can't think of one because I think we kind of brush that stuff aside in our own psyches, and you forget about it very quickly because it's uncomfortable to yourself. But I'm sure I was somebody's bully at some point.
Actually tell you a time
that I bullied you. Let's not talk about that.
No, that I actually was a bully.
Oh, really? Okay.
I was a bully to bullies.
Okay. Well, maybe they had it coming, so I don't feel so bad.
I felt justified in this. I felt like, my job was to be their karma, if you will.
Sure.
And there was a boy on the bus for high school, and he kept picking on this freshman girl. We were, sophomores, and he picked on her, and he picked on her, and he picked on her. And I lost my temper, and I pulled him over the seat.
You just reached over.
I literally grabbed him and pulled him over into my seat.
Oh my gosh. Because
she was in front of him and he was in front of me and he was pulling her hair. What ended up prompting it. Do you remember those little packets of relish?
Yeah.
He opened a packet of relish and put it in her hair.
Oh, lovely.
And I couldn't take it anymore. And I grabbed him and I pulled him over the seat into the seat with me. And I shoved his face up against the window. I might have used some expletives.
Wow.
But I told him if he touched her again, I was going to make his life not pleasant.
Yes.
And he stopped doing it. But I'm sure in his mind, maybe he thought the girl was cute and in a very misguided attempt, whatever the case may be. But I do definitely recall that time. It's not necessarily something I'm proud of. I'm sure there was a better way to handle it. And I had my own insecurities, and there was a reason for that. I had been bullied, and I found it always easier to stand up for other people than for myself, which is, I guess, an INFJ thing. But
potentially, nevertheless, though, I mean, it's like in this case, it's easy to sort of, in retrospect, say, "Hey, that guy had it coming." You know, but does that mean he felt like he had it coming? And maybe you are his bully.
I mean, he could be walking around telling a story about how this crazy girl behind him in the bus grabbed him and pulled him up over the seat.
Right. And maybe Paul is walking around the world viewing me as his bully because I couldn't take it anymore and I wanted to fight him. You know, who knows? Or, you know, I mean, maybe he had a reason. You know?
And even sharing that is really vulnerable because I don't think anybody wants to be seen as a bully, even though we are sometimes the villains in other people's stories, regardless of our perception, which is what we're kind of talking about with this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there you go. There's our soft underbelly.
Carrie was once a bully to another bully. Doesn't make it better. Two wrongs don't make a right. I'm not saying that.
I am. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway.
Yeah, but there is a power in going first. And sometimes that looks a little bit different. I once had somebody that I rounded a corner and there was a woman I knew in tears. And I stopped and I asked her, you know, are you okay? Can I help? And she's like, I'm fine. And I just kind of said, you know, I'm here. You can talk to me. And in this conversation, she opened up about problems within her relationship and something that was very acute that was going on with, you know, certain vices in her relationship. And it was obviously really difficult for her. Yeah. And I had actually had a very similar experience. And I sat with her and I held her hands and I shared my experience with her. And, you know, towards the end, she's like, I'm so sorry you went through that. And I said, no, I'm sorry you're going through it right now. And I'm here for you. And it changed our relationship ultimately. This was a person that I knew on a professional level who then became a friend. And it was that moment that allowed that. So
that's what it's all about.
Yeah. And that's, you know, a big part of this too is who can you trust? You know, we want to make sure that everybody feels seen and heard and understood. So if you have friends, family, or somebody in your community that already displays their own vulnerability, those are going to be really good people to go to and start with. Because most people, if they are able to be vulnerable themselves, they're going to have that capacity for you. It's not going to be everybody.
No.
There's some people that wear their vulnerability on their sleeve, which is fine. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll have that capacity.
Right.
So who should you be wary of?
Yeah, there are people you shouldn't trust out there who don't have their stuff together and have not healed from their stuff, and they're not going to be good landing pads for your vulnerability.
Right. Not everybody's going to have that capacity.
Right. Or maybe it is that place at work where you're not supposed to be vulnerable, and that's not the place to just dump it. You know, you got to start small somewhere else. You know?
Yeah. I mean, there's just toxic people in general.
Yeah.
There's people who have in the past lost your trust over other situations.
Sure.
Probably not the best people to try to share that with.
Somebody you've bullied or wronged in some other way. Sure. Yeah.
And especially defensive people.
Yeah.
Somebody who, when you share something, they immediately take it personally.
Sure.
People who will get defensive about things that even have nothing to do with them. These are not going to be people who are going to be able to leave that space for you.
Right. They're just not ready yet.
Yeah. Have you ever had a situation, Joel, where maybe you trusted the wrong person?
And how about they fit the bill for all of the things we were just talking about? It was a work professional situation, and I don't remember the specifics of why we were in this situation, but I was in a meeting, and it was not a huge meeting, but, 5 or 6 of us in a meeting about marketing strategy or something. And this one individual, a former boss, who I've talked about on this podcast before. What are you doing sleeping under the desk?
Oh, no.
This particular individual, one of my personal nemesis, is just one of the villains in my life all time. So you're probably going to hear lots and lots of stories about this guy. So anyway, I don't remember why it came up or what happened, but I remember just telling him, they're saying to the group, yeah, my relationship at home is dissolving, and sorry I missed the deadline. I don't know what it was, but I just was like laid it all out, and again started crying at the meeting. And I think maybe 2-3 hours after the meeting ended, he came into my office, shut the door, and said, "Don't do that ever again." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, I can't remember how he put it, but he basically said, "Try to manipulate the room and take over from my power in the room as the authority to circumvent my authority in the room." Essentially what he was saying. He was saying, come out, don't do that. You're taking my control away from me.
Well, and ultimately you probably just made him uncomfortable with his own ability to be vulnerable.
100%. There's that. And then, again, he became a bully even more so. And he used it against me in terms of telling other people. He would introduce me to vendors by saying, "Don't worry, he'll cry for you soon."
Oh, no.
Things like that, and I think he just wasn't ready to be in that place at that particular place, time, and circumstance. And apart from that, probably wasn't that appropriate for me to do that right then.
But sometimes it does come out at times that you would not like them to.
Sure. I'm giving myself grace on that my relationship was dissolving. Like, of course I was going to be vulnerable, just in general. And so I give myself grace there. However, maybe not the time to put it, I could have easily just said, "I'm having some trouble at home. I'm sorry," moved on. And then I could have found somebody in that group to be more vulnerable in a strategic, purposeful way. Mm-hmm. And so there's an appropriate way to do it too, and an appropriate people. But this, in front of him was not the time, the place, or the person.
Yeah.
Then. And who knows what he's like now? And maybe he's the most vulnerable guy in the world, although I just kind of don't see it. But who knows? He's on his journey and I'm on mine.
Well put. Yeah, there's some people that just aren't going to have that capacity, whether it's at work or professionally.
Moving on, though.
A book that completely transformed my life is The Mastery of Love by Don Miguel Ruiz. Have you heard of Don Miguel Ruiz?
I have. I think he wrote the 4 Agreements.
Yep.
Right. Okay, good. I'm correct.
Yeah,
good.
it was huge for a long time. I did read that. I like it.
I think I read it, but I don't think it resonated with me how I felt like it should. But that's by no means, by any stretch, any kind of,
No, it's a great book. It's a great resource for people who maybe struggle with integrity a little bit, maybe struggle with how to navigate things. I think for me, those were things like, well, yeah, of course. Mm-hmm. Of course, be impeccable with your word. Of course, all of these things.
Because as we know, integrity is paramount for you.
Right. So for me, it was a good book. I enjoyed reading it. I have it. I actually have all of his books. Mm-hmm. But The Mastery of Love was a game changer for me. Okay. If you've ever read a book before where you read it and you can't put it down and it just speaks to you, that was this book.
Okay.
And so he starts out by imagining a world where everybody has a skin disease. Mm-hmm. So it starts when you're about 3 or 4, and as you get older and older, you get more and more lesions on your skin.
Okay.
So you're living in a world where everybody's afraid to touch each other. They're afraid to be touched by other people. And so they all walk around really cautious and nobody's connecting, truly connecting. Mm-hmm. So then he talks about, imagining a miracle happens one day and you wake up and you don't have those painful boils on your skin. And it's actually pleasant to touch.
Yeah.
Now, if you're living in this world where everybody has this skin disease, people are they're afraid to touch you still. They're still afraid of being touched.
Yeah. And even though you're able to do that, they may not be used to doing that yet.
Right. And they're still worried that it may hurt you.
Sure.
And while this isn't specific to vulnerability, it does touch upon that we all walk around with these internal wounds.
Yeah.
And that we just can't see them.
Yeah.
He points out that humans live in fear of being hurt and hurting others. And ultimately, that's what makes it more and more difficult for us to be vulnerable. A small child is not afraid of crying.
Yeah, very much.
But if they learn through parents, school,
right. I'll give you something to cry about.
society, if they learn that that's not something that's accepted, they're going to carry those internal wounds.
Sure.
And so there is a power in saying, you know what? It's okay. I know this might hurt, but it's more important to have that connection.
Right, exactly.
And that is the power of going first.
Absolutely. And I think this also touches upon another topic that we might end up doing a podcast on at some point way later down the road. Who knows? But it's kind of near and dear to my heart about navigating the emotional world and relationships and connections. And that is the idea of hurt versus harm.
Yes.
And, things can hurt, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily bad. Harm is damage. You know, and we have to be aware of those things. And so when you've got a baby and they're sick, you might have to give them a shot. It will hurt them, but it is for their benefit and it will not harm them. And so we have to be aware of those two things. And sometimes we, with other people, end up trying to avoid hurting them and therefore not connecting. But what we're really afraid of is harming them.
Yes.
But you just have to be aware of that. They have to be aware of that, of course, too. But anyway, that's just something that came to mind just now.
No,
discussion. So.
I agree. And you are the first person that ever really pointed that out to me, the difference between hurt and harm. And a lot of that, regardless of intention, if our actions hurt somebody, one of the most vulnerable things that we can do is to apologize.
Yes, absolutely.
And people don't realize that apologies really do fall in the realm of vulnerability.
Absolutely. That's a really tough thing sometimes, is to be the one who apologizes, to go first, to say I was wrong, to admit you were wrong.
Yeah. A proper apology is going to be where you apologize, say you're sorry for, regret over what you did, acknowledge the impact it had on that person.
Right. I think that's a big one that some people forget. So,
and the biggest one is the change moving forward.
Right.
So that is really difficult to do, even with the most trusted people. It is a very vulnerable space to be in.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't do that. They just sort of say, I'm sorry, and then they move on. I said I was sorry. Yeah, but, did you acknowledge these other things?
Right. Are
you going to change? No, and I've even had people apologize. I'm sorry, but I'm just me. In other words, I'm sorry you felt the way you felt, but I'm not going to change.
An apology should never have a but in it.
I would agree.
Never, ever should there be, I'm sorry, but. Nope, that's not a proper apology. That's not how this works.
Well, Carrie, I'm sorry, but it's time to move on.
Apologies don't have a but, Joel.
Well, there's two of them sitting right here. But anyway, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Anyway, I think it takes a lot to be vulnerable and brave enough to apologize in a correct way. And I think maybe that's a good place for people to start, is to be vulnerable, is just say, I'm not going to be mean to somebody just so I can apologize. But next time you have a situation where you need to apologize to somebody, think about those three things and get really vulnerable with yourself. And it will probably go a long way.
Absolutely. And I invite all the listeners in the next week or two either to apologize for something using that method or try some other form of vulnerability.
Yep.
Share your story with somebody who you've been thinking about sharing it with. Talk to other people. Maybe you're somebody who's been thinking about going to one of these group discussions. Just go and sit in. Just listen, hear it. Invite yourself to the power that is vulnerability, because ultimately, like Don Miguel Ruiz said in The Mastery of Love, if you are healed, if you go through this process and you're healing through that, it makes everything less painful.
It
really does. It makes everything less scary. The more iteration, the more you do things, the less scary it is. And the easier it becomes to be vulnerable or anything else in your life.
Yeah. And remember that this isn't going to kill you. Like, obviously being vulnerable when someone's got a gun on you or something is not.
Yes.
But generally speaking, this is not going to kill you. This is probably just going to be a little uncomfortable. Or it may hurt you, but it's not going to harm you.
Yeah.
And in, hearkening back to the person who was a great therapist who told me the difference between hurt and harm. Another thing she used to say to me all the time is, so you're uncomfortable. So what? It's just uncomfortability. That's it. You're just uncomfortable. That's it.
Get comfortable with uncomfortable.
Right. And so, again, get uncomfortable for a minute. It's okay. It's not going to kill you. Just go ahead and apologize. Go to that thing, be vulnerable with that person. Put yourself out there, find a way to do it that works for you, but start small and take baby steps into it.
Yeah, there is a really excellent book that we're going to also list in our notes.
Yep, in the show notes.
It's Brené Brown's Power of Vulnerability. Mm-hmm. It's a really good place to start if you're looking to understand vulnerability, how difficult it is. She puts everything so eloquently, so understandable.
Right. And if you're one of the 4 people on the planet who don't know who she is yet, and I don't mean to make you feel bad about that, it might not have just come across your radar, but she's very popular and for a good reason. And she talks about this in a very, as you said, eloquent way.
Yeah, she's a social scientist is what she refers to herself as. And she's got a lot of amazing resources and books. TED Talks. She's
podcast.
she's amazing. So we'll put that in there too. It's an excellent resource when you want to, embark upon this. Mm-hmm. I really invite you to.
Absolutely.
Shift your mindset. Go first. And let people show you who they are. Mm-hmm. Pivot when the people show you that they can't be trustworthy, that maybe they either don't belong in your life or belong in a different area of your life. Maybe they're just fun time Brad.
Maybe. Yeah, exactly. And I would also add in here, maybe you were about to do this and I don't mean to step on your toes, but let other people be vulnerable with you and reward it. Appreciate it. Tell them you appreciate it. Tell them it's rewarding. Show them with your own vulnerability.
Yeah, everybody has these wounds. Mm-hmm. Everybody struggles with vulnerability.
Yeah.
So make sure that you're a resource to them in a safe place.
Yeah.
To discuss things that are difficult for people. It truly is a gift to share and let others share with you. As humans, it's one of the most beautiful things that we can do.
Yeah.
There is a power in not being alone in this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know that's my favorite word, but absolutely. And all right. So I think that wraps up another one. Just a little bit of housekeeping here that I want to cover. As I said on all the podcasts before, you can totally talk back to the show in a number of ways. You can do that on the Connect With Us page on our website, reticenceandreverie.com. If you go there, there's a way to literally talk back to the show. You can send a web form to us. Either way, just let us know if you want it shared for public consumption or you don't want it shared and you want it to remain private between us. Either way is great. We're totally down for whichever way and method you prefer. And a bit more housekeeping. The next couple of weeks are going to be a little bit hit or miss with us as far as scheduling. So we might not be as, what's the word I'm looking for?
Consistent.
Consistent in our delivery of the podcast and always getting it out on Fridays or whatever. So, but rest assured, we are working on stuff and we will be as consistent as we can be. We're not taking months off here or anything, but maybe a weekend here or there because we've got a lot going on here.
Yes.
Yeah, we've got kids graduating. We've got family visits. We've got lots going on professionally. So it's going to be a little hit or miss, but we are committed to you and we're committed to this podcast. And so we will be around for sure. So keep checking back. On a more technical note, I also wanted to just say thanks for bearing with us through some of these technical issues with sound sometimes because we are doing this at home and we have a dog and we have kids and things coming in and out of the house here and stuff. And so it's not always perfect sound treatment in here. We're not in a studio like we wish we were.
But what do we always say? Progress.
Progress, not perfection. Exactly. And so at any rate, if you ever hear some things that you don't quite or you're not able to exactly explain. No, it's not the unexplainable. It's not a ghost in the machine. It's a dog in the room.
Snoring.
Snoring away. And if you're on YouTube, look up now. There's a picture of him. That's Conan.
The Barksbarian.
The Barksbarian.
So
anyway, I don't know how much of this will make it in there, but I just wanted to just put that out there and say, thanks for going along on the ride with us anyway. We're doing our best. And I also wanted to bring up that we're still trying to schedule our first guest. He's signed on. He's ready. He's eager. We're just trying to work on scheduling now, but that will be coming soon as well. So stay tuned. Beyond that, share the show. Share the show with anybody you think could benefit from it. Or even people who you don't think can benefit from it. Share with everybody, scream from the rooftops, shout from the rooftops.
Text them, you need this.
Yes, exactly.
I'm kidding.
Exactly. I think that's a great place to start, honestly. And one more thing, if you are enjoying what we're doing here and you believe in the show and you believe in what we're doing here and you value it, we have one more little favor from you, and that is to like, subscribe, and review this podcast wherever you're getting it. If you're getting it on Apple Podcasts, go to Apple and give us a review. It really helps the show out on Apple. If you're on Spotify, do the same thing. If you're on YouTube, do the same thing. Just subscribe if you can. Like each episode as you listen to them. It's real easy. Just write a sentence. Great show. And if you just put that on the review for this podcast on that platform, it will really help the show grow. And we'd like to see it grow because we'd like to bring you more content. And
we want to help people. Yeah. We want to help as many people as we can.
Yeah, we want to get it out there to as many more people as we can. Anyway, if you feel like it, please go ahead and do that for us. We would really appreciate it. All right, and I'm done with my long spiel. And I think that brings us to that point in the show that we all love. It's time for the quote. What is our quote for today, Carrie?
So I actually took this quote from the book Power of Vulnerability by Brené Brown, just to show you all the power of it.
Great.
She says, vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. It's the source of hope, empathy, accountability, and authenticity.
Perfect. Well said, Brené. Thank you very much. And definitely go check her out. And when you get there, tell her about us because we want to be on her podcast and vice versa.
We love you, Brené.
So I think that about wraps it up. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate you.
Okay, I'll be over here on the buddy bench.
Hello, everyone. As Carrie and Joel bid adieu to another episode, they wanted you to be aware of a couple of things. The information provided in this podcast is for general informational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing discussed should be interpreted as professional advice, including but not limited to legal, financial, medical, or mental health advice. Listeners should always consult a qualified professional for guidance specific to their individual situation. All opinions expressed by the hosts or guests are their own and do not represent the views of any organizations or employers. While efforts are made to ensure accuracy, the hosts make no guarantees and assume no responsibility for any errors or omissions, nor for any actions taken based on the content of this podcast. Listening to this podcast does not create any professional relationship between you and the hosts. All content is provided as is without warranties of any kind. If you choose to rely on the information in this podcast, you do so at your own risk. Thanks for listening and be well.